Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for a Lindamood-Bell Academy virtual open house. My name is Mimi. I am the Center Director here in Notting Hill in London, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. I have joined Lindamood-Bell learning processes back in 2007, and I was teaching children, and I was so intrigued by how the human mind works and develops that I then went on to pursue a PhD in applied cognitive science and spent over a decade in academic research. And then, after all this time studying and researching and teaching behavioral sciences, I was so excited to return to Lindamood-Bell and apply my knowledge and expertise to help children reach their full potential. Talking of potential, I am thrilled that you will learn about the unique Lindamood-Bell Academy directly from our Director of Academy located in California, Emily Jane. You will see that Emily will tell you about various packages that we offer at the Lindamood-Bell Academy. I just wanted to let you know that here in London, we provide only the gold package. And I also wanted to let you know that at this moment in time, we do have limited enrollment placements available in the UK. On that note, I hope you enjoy the presentation, and I will be available afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. So I look forward to seeing you later. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our Lindamood-Bell Academy virtual open house. My name is Emily Jane. I am the director of the Lindamood-Bell Academy, and it is absolutely a pleasure and a privilege to have some time with you today. I have been with Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes for over 24 years, and I've been the director of our school for 4 out of its 5 years of existence. And I hope that you are as excited about the information that I get to share with you today as I am every time I get to present it. So refill your coffee, refill your water, whatever it is that you need, settle in, and let's spend some time together talking about a really wonderful and unique learning environment for our students. One of the things I would like to start with is the tale of Bubba. We at Lindamood-Bell and at Lindamood-Bell Academy love to put names to faces whenever we can. And the story of Bubba is quite a heartwarming one. He took some of his time to write a personal note to Miss Nancy Bell, the co-founder of Lindamood-Bell. And he says, "Dear Nancy Bell, thank you for creating Lindamood-Bell. My name is Christian, but I like to be called Bubba. I study in the Berkeley Center, and they've been helping me in VV right now, and I've only been here for 2 months. When I first came in, I was reading at a 2.8 reading level, and now I'm reading at 6th grade. Sincerely, Bubba." Now, the wonderful thing about Bubba is he's only spent a small amount of time with Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes developing the imagery language connection needed to be successful, not just with the task of reading, but eventually, as we're going to learn, how to apply those skills and processes to curriculum. So Bubba's gains in basic reading skills represent very typical gains with Lindamood-Bell after just weeks of intensive intervention. And that's key right there. Intensive intervention, intensive instruction. The reason I want to start talking with you first about the intensive intervention is because it is one of the things that makes Lindamood-Bell Academy the unique learning environment and school that it is. The foundations of Lindamood-Bell Academy are in Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes and the intensive interventions, the remediations that we provide as a corporation. And that's what I want to start talking with you about before I just dive into our school environment. So one of the things that is on everybody's mind currently, and in fact over the last about year and a half, has been this phrase called learning loss. And unfortunately, during the course of the pandemic, there's been a lot of studies that are showing our students, by and large, across the United States, have kind of almost paused in learning, or that there's been a lot of learning loss, that there hasn't been a lot of gain. And there's this study out of Stanford that finds that reading skills among young students have stalled during the pandemic. That is terrifying. That is terrifying. We don't want our kids to lose a step in a typical year, let alone in a year where COVID-19 and the pandemic has affected us, not only on a national level, of course, but on a global level. And so one of the things that is a benefit, one of the things that we have continued to realize, not even learn, but continue to realize as an organization, is that we as an organization can conquer learning loss and improve basic skills for our students with, like I said, that intensive intervention. That intensive intervention occurs 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. It is a part-time job, quite literally, for our students to be able to develop this. The results are, however, significant if that instruction is targeted to develop what we call the sensory cognitive processing as a foundation for language and literacy skills. So that's what I want to start our presentation with today, is discussing a bit more about this sensory cognitive processing, because again, that's the foundation, that's the crux of what makes the Lindamood-Bell Academy School vastly different from any other learning environment that our students could be a part of. So what I'd like to share with you, because all of our Academy students first do intensive intervention with the majority of the packages that we offer for enrollment, I'd like to share with you some results of what that intervention looks like. And so what you can see very quickly here is if we look at some of our decoding only students, these are students who might be identified as dyslexic profile, right? Or students who just struggle to read, even though they're clearly very, very bright. And what we can see is with pre and post percentiles, our pre is this navy blue down here, which you can kind of see is really sort of low. The scores that we're looking for, if we're finding students that are functioning within average range, by the way, is going to be a scale between the 25th percentile on the low end and the 75th percentile on the high end. What you can see with these pre-test scores on things like symbol imagery or phonological awareness, symbol imagery is also known as orthographic awareness, and the ability to decode and recognize sight word base, and then also then understand what they're reading. They're all at the very low or even below the average range. But what we can see is after even an average of 107 hours of instruction, that's basically 5 weeks of instruction, 5 weeks at 4 hours a day of intensive intervention, that these students clearly made huge gains, in some cases more than doubling the scores, their performance, because we developed their sensory cognitive foundations for reading. And thus, when you do that, not only can you pick up a book and read it better, but you can pick up your content in your curriculum and read it better. So this is a quick slide about students with a prior dyslexia diagnosis. So these are students who have been very specifically identified as dyslexic, not just having a reading challenge or a specific learning disability or something of the like. And so we have an average age here of 10 years old, an average of about 120 hours of intervention, and that's a total of, you can visualize, 6 weeks of intervention, again, developing orthographic awareness, phonological processing, decoding, and also sight word recognition. You can see how low those profiles on average were prior to intervention, but after 6 weeks of time, now we've got students who are performing in all of these fundamental foundational skills comfortably within the average range. And what that means is now they're at a level where they're not being frustrated by instruction and intervention. They're not at a frustration level. They're at a more instructional, if not an independent level. And those are levels that we can then start introducing some content and curriculum to, and the student will be finding more success. We also see students who, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more later, who struggle with comprehension. Again, very bright students who may or may not have a prior diagnosis, but who are struggling, even if they're phenomenal readers, to understand and pull the main ideas and the content that they need to learn in school, and thus they might be struggling in school. So on this one, we're showing an average of 100 hours of intervention. Excuse me. The average age here is 12 years old. You'll notice the difference here between this average age and our age of the decoding students, because anybody have a guess? it's a lot easier to see when a decoding error is happening versus a comprehension error. And so oftentimes those issues are not identified until a little bit later on in a student's school. 12-year-old, they're probably around fourth, fifth, maybe, not fourth, but fifth, maybe even sixth grade level. Whereas learning challenges with reading are evident a lot earlier on and can also get addressed typically a little bit earlier on. So again, don't forget, our standard view of what we want to consider average is from the 25th at the low end to the 75th percentile at the higher end. And these student scores, you can see, go from below and slightly lower in the average range to very comfortably within the average range in terms of comprehension and also vocabulary. This next slide, again, these are Learning Center results, and I'm showing you this because this is the foundation upon which the Academy is built. This is the type of intervention that our students receive prior to starting curriculum with Academy, and that's why this is so critical and important for me to share with you. For our severe students in comprehension only, and we see students for comprehension, for decoding, for math, for a combination of these, or for these skills in isolation as well, okay? There is an average of 104 hours here. Again, visualize this is about 5 weeks of intensive intervention out of a student's life, and we're seeing phenomenal gains. I mean, look at this in comprehension, in vocabulary. Even if vocabulary is fine, that student's initial comprehension was low because they were not being able to make an image, a movie, a visualization of the content they're receiving. And that's how we process information. So it's these sensory cognitive functions that are the crux and the foundation for how we as a people learn. And as one of our founders, Pat Lindamood, says, the brain can only receive information from our senses. It is a multi-sensory organ. It's going to make a lot more sense in the next few slides. So the sensory cognitive functions are foundational to all learning, Sensory input of imagery is a primary sensory cognitive function. I'm going to share more with you about this in the next moment or two. The primary cause of learning difficulty, get this, it is not low intelligence, socioeconomic status, gender, education, or motivation. It is none of those things. It is the foundation of sensory cognitive processing that determines learning difficulties and learning successes. So there are 3 sensory cognitive functions I'm going to briefly introduce you to right now, and then I'm going to talk you through those in the next couple of slides. One is phonemic awareness, that also is phonological processing. It is the ability to perceive the identity, order, and number of sounds within a word. So if I said the word pip, I is the second sound, and then p is the first and the last sound. That's phonological processing. Symbol imagery is a second sensory cognitive function, and that focuses on the ability to now create a mental representation, a mental image for the sounds and letters within the word. So if I said that nonsense word pip before and you're going, oh, P-I-P, well, you're automatically incorporating your symbol imagery and visualizing the letter that goes with the symbol of that word. Okay, so that's a combination of phonological processing and symbol imagery. It's a perfect example. And then third is concept imagery. Concept imagery is the ability to create an imaged gestalt or whole from oral or written language. It's the mechanism in our brain that allows us to make movies for what we see and what we hear and be able to retain that information and then use it for critical thinking later on. So there's 2 types of imagery. There are parts and wholes. So that symbol imagery, where I gave you the example of pip a moment ago, whether it's a real or a nonsense word, it's that ability to image in your mind's eye identity, order, and number of sounds and assign the letter symbol to those sounds. And then the flip side of that is gestalt imagery or whole. And that is the ability to take all of those individual words and make imagery, a movie in your mind's eye. That's also what makes reading so enjoyable and fun. And it's honestly the mechanism that helps us go, when I read the book, it was 10 times better than the movie. How many of you all out there have read a book, seen the movie and went, movie was fine, but the book was 10 times better. Probably if you are a person like that, like I am, it's because you have amazingly developed concept imagery that helps you see content and ideas from simple words. So let's start for just a moment and talk about symbol imagery. So this is our friend Buzz, and symbol imagery, he's going to sort of take us through our symbol imagery journey, is the phonological and orthographic imagery for reading and spelling words. It's also known as orthographic memory. When a student struggles with orthography, with symbol imagery, it can look like all of these things, any and all. One of them, it can look like all of them. So difficulty in decoding. They have to sound out words time and time again. Difficulty creating a sight word base from words that are continually decoded. Fast and accurate decoding, the ability to put together multisyllabic words very, very quickly using the rules of the English language to help us pronounce. Contextual reading can often be a difficulty as well, where there's a lot of guessing as opposed to rapid, accurate decoding. And then orthographic spelling, where a student spells a word the way that it sounds versus the way that it should look, right? So an example would be right. Could be either version of that. But either way, that's spelling the word like it sounds. And that's a challenge when you have a symbol imagery weakness. So the flip side of that, like I mentioned, is concept imagery. And that is creating an imaged whole or a gestalt for comprehension and thinking. So this is our friend Sophie, who's going to be taking us through this part of the journey. And with Sophie, she has some weak concept imagery, and that looks like information going in one ear and out the other without the ability to stick and grasp the whole of the information. Thus, we get maybe only parts. And what happens then is a student fails to process all of the directions that are given to them. How many of you have given your children 3 to 5 step directions about cleaning their room and brushing their teeth and getting their pajamas on and getting their backpack ready for the next day? And you check on them 10 minutes later and they've done one of those things. Well, it might be that they processed parts, but not the whole of the directions. Or they've read an entire page or an entire section of text, and they don't remember all of what they read, and they have to read it time and time again. That's information kind of going in one ear and out the other and not sticking to create an imaged whole. When we have that imaged gestalt from oral and written language, what happens is this. It helps us with higher order thinking, getting the main idea, drawing conclusions. It helps us with inferencing and predicting and extending information. And it helps us to evaluate not only information presented in text, but also it helps us to evaluate the information that we're receiving in moment by moment in the daily world that we live in. And so some symptoms of weak concept imagery, in addition to what I've already described, are written language comprehension and oral language comprehension, difficulty with critical thinking and following oral directions, verbal expression. Sometimes a student thinks they're saying something, but really they're saying the same thing 4 different ways. To them, it sounds completely different, though, because they're not getting the gestalt. Difficulty expressing language with writing. How many of you have students who can maybe give you a lovely summary, but when it comes to then they now have to synthesize all that information and write it out? The writing is distinctly different from maybe what they can verbalize. Interpreting social situations can be very challenging and awkward, and also understanding cause and effect. So it's important to look at these pieces that I've talked to you about, these 3 sensory cognitive functions, as the component parts of reading. So what I want to do next is I'm going to show you how these all fit together. So far, we've talked about them kind of as isolated and individual skills. But right now, I want you to see how they start blending together for the underlying processing ability in our reading, right? So that auditory processing, this is where we not only have the sounds in words for phonological processing, but also what I call that symbol imagery, putting the letters to those sounds. That is a critical key part of auditory processing as well. And then again, that visual orthographic processing, that's also your symbol imagery. And then this is where we put everything in context to read on the page, utilizing your vocabulary as a support to help you call out those words and start putting together and getting context. But all of this fits together for the biggest picture, which is we take in information, text, oral language, because we need to comprehend it. We need to use that to critically think and follow directions and take it to the next level and the next step. So when those are struggles for a student, you end up with a spectrum of challenge. And that spectrum can range all the way on one side for weak decoding, perhaps a label of dyslexia, specific learning disability, sometimes auditory processing disorders, things like that. All happen when a student has these weak component parts of reading. So the student who can comprehend whenever you read it orally to them, but they cannot read it on the page. That's our friend Buzz over here on the left-hand side of our slide. Conversely, when we have a student who struggles with comprehension, it might be that other end of the spectrum up here, and sometimes when a student is performing in a more severe way on this side of the spectrum, they may also have a diagnosis of dyslexia or autism spectrum disorders. These are the students very typically who can do all of these interior functions just fine, but their comprehension, that gestalt ability to make the movie from the information that they're taking in, it's that in one ear and out the other. And that's the weakness in concept imagery. And again, thank you for sticking with me on this. It's critical to understand these pieces because this is how we determine the most differentiated and unique approach for our students as they enroll in Lindamood-Bell Academy. So conquering learning loss, how do we do that? Right? I started off this presentation talking a bit about that. How do we do it? So in understanding those sensory cognitive functions and how our students go about doing that and developing and needing to develop those pieces, we can conquer learning loss by first doing a learning ability evaluation. Now, whether you come to Lindamood-Bell for our intervention or whether you come to Lindamood-Bell Academy for our school environment or a combination of both, which a lot of our students do, it all starts with a learning ability evaluation. This is critical. There is approximately 4 hours of standardized assessments. And then several days later, there is approximately a 1-hour consultation where we're going to go over all of these results of all of these assessments that we've done with your student. And we're going to be able to talk about here's where and why your student is struggling. And here's how that transitions into how they might be struggling in a school environment. And here's our solution to bridge that gap, to build those sensory cognitive processes, right? And as Mary, an elementary school principal, said, it's like getting a fingerprint of your child's unique learning profile. And it's through that profile where we can really discern where are they struggling and what are we going to do about it? How are we going to partner with you to deal with that and remediate that? So, for example, our friend Buzz, and I've kept your learning circles up here. If you think about that left-hand side, right, of our processing scale, let me show it to you again. Buzz had really strong, actually, vocabulary. He had actually some really strong ability to decode. By the way, Buzz is in the 7th grade, but at the end of 6th, he still hated reading. He had some improved phonological processing, but he can sound out words better, still can't read, right? Well, this is evidence of being able to sound out those words better. But there's a large gap between Buzz's ability to sound out words and his sight words. Right? That's a large gap. And a gap like that, even though those scores are within the average range of each other, that's still going to cause some frustration. And then when we go ahead and we look at his rate and accuracy and fluency, those are even lower at the low end of average, if not significantly below. So Buzz, who is a bright kid and is still being able to get some stuff out of his reading, is not reading efficiently. His brain is working overtime to try to read, and that's affecting how much he can comprehend and pull out of that text. I believe I called Natalie Sophie earlier. I apologize. It is Natalie that we're talking about, our girl who with the gestalt imagery, concept imagery. She's the flip side of the coin, and here's why. Now, she is a bright girl. She had learned how to read words very, very early on, right? But by fourth grade, she was getting sick before going to school. Moving her to the front of the classroom with preferential seating, et cetera, did not help her performance. Okay, here's why. Let me talk you through this. All of these scores, again, super, super high. This is a smart little cookie. She could read anything you put in front of her. But despite that good vocabulary and despite her ability to read well, she was still having information go in one ear and out the other. She could not visualize what was being communicated in a written language and even in oral language. So when we look at those profiles, those are some samples of the assessments that we give. There's several more in our battery, but those are some of the more pertinent ones that really help us identify very key markers to what a student can and can't do and where they're struggling, right? But then based on those markers and based on that performance, what we can then do is create a plan for some individualized, intensive instruction. This instruction is 1-to-1. It is 5 days a week and it is 4 hours a day. Some students come sometimes a little bit less and sometimes students come even longer, maybe 6 hours a day. When we're having students with us to develop their reading ability, to develop symbol imagery as the foundation for accurate, fast reading and spelling, this is kind of what it looks like. We start stimulating that mental imagery for sounds and for letters by saying, what letters do you picture for the word ip? Now, the student's not ever seeing it, for example, in this case point right here with Nancy, but she's saying ip. The student first visualizes it, and now they're going to verbalize from the imagery, I, P, and he's writing those with his finger, trying to imagine it. The way to develop some orthographic memory for retaining that, now in the word east, for example, Nancy said, okay, tell me the second letter you saw in the word east. Again, Buzz may never have looked at that word. He's imagining E-A-S-T in his mind, and he's able to go, oh, second letter's A, right? If we put a B in the front, the word's going to say beast. That's the ability to use and develop that orthographic imagery for single and then ultimately into multi-syllable words, and then getting on the page for reading and also spelling and writing. So in 9 weeks, this is from Christy and Mom, that her student was with us part-time, again, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. She went from not recognizing a single sight word to reading a book at the second grade level in just a few weeks. That's unbelievable. It's unheard of. And those are the kind of gains that are very, very typical all the time, every day for a student at Lindamood-Bell and also in the academy. So language to develop our concept imagery with Natalie. What do those words make you picture? That's going to be the key thing, the key phrase that we're saying to students when we want to stimulate the ability to make that Gestalt movie in their mind's eye. So what happens is we say, what do those words make you picture? And the student then starts visualizing what they're picturing, maybe a little squirrel in a tree, right? And then the student is being able to use those words, I picture, and they're going to describe that mental image. So a mom says, the daughter I see now loves to read. Lindamood-Bell was able to provide the right setting with the instructors and resources to aid in her comprehension, and build her self-esteem that was robbed by years of wrong placement and diagnosis. So that's a key thing. We don't provide a medical label diagnosis, dyslexia, auditory processing for what's happening with your student. That's not our role. But our role is, in fact, with those testing summaries that I showed you earlier, to diagnose strengths and weaknesses, put that together and figure out why is your student struggling and what are we going to do about it. So again, back to that spectrum of Buzz and Natalie, our decoding and our comprehension, two far ends. But we often have students who need a little bit of both, plus the dreaded M word, math. We've got students who struggle in math, and we have programs specific for developing not only the symbol imagery, but the concept imagery for math as well. So one of the other things that makes Lindamood-Bell and Lindamood-Bell Academy extremely unique is that our instructional experience aligns with Dr. Alan Pavio's theory of cognition. It's called the dual coding theory. It's fascinating. And what Dr. Pavio said was cognition is proportional to the extent that the coding mechanisms of mental imagery and language are integrated. So if you think about this is imagery, this is language, they have to connect and be integrated for cognition, for learning to take place. And that's exactly what our methodology and what the foundation of our imagery language connection is built on. It's the foundation for it. So our child entered the program hating to read. Now sometimes his father catches him at 2 a.m. under the covers, sneaking a book. And he's even had to take away reading as a punishment. I don't know how I feel about that fully, but isn't that a great thing? The student hates to read, and now they're up at 2 a.m. trying to read because they're so involved with it. So if we, as an organization, have the ability to measure learning ability, we can differentiate a diagnosis, and we can provide instruction to develop the sensory cognitive function of imagery, then we can make significant gains in reading and in comprehension in weeks of instruction, conquer learning loss, and experience more success in school. And so here's the teaser, and here's where we're going to start switching a little bit over to Lindamood-Bell Academy. I want you to visualize, what if there's a school now that's specifically designed to support these students who have gone through this intervention? And that's where I get to say the good news is, welcome to Lindamood-Bell Academy. The Lindamood-Bell Academy is founded on more than 35 years of experience and research in our learning centers. Our academy students engage in our sensory cognitive instruction. Every student engages in sensory cognitive instruction first, and then successfully study in our positive learning environment. It is, in fact, our dream come true. Like I mentioned, I've been with Lindamood-Bell for 24 years, and it has been a dream of mine as well to have a safe school environment that specifically supports the methodology that we help utilize with our students to help develop that sensory cognitive processing. So our mission statement, every school has to have a mission statement, and ours is as follows. Lindamood-Bell Academy believes passionately, very, very passionately, if you can't tell, that all individuals can learn to their potential. We are a unique K-12 private school that develops the imagery language foundation, for success in language processing, and that success carries over then into curriculum. And that is what makes Lindamood-Bell Academy so different. So this child went through 150 hours of private tutors with little to no results. They could see improvement in his first week at Academy. Now he's reading and getting back on track. The staff are amazingly supportive, and we're thankful for Lindamood-Bell. I love hearing these stories. As a person who spent my life and my career at Lindamood-Bell and now with the Academy, it's so exciting for me to hear those pieces of feedback, because it means we're doing exactly what we set out to do. What our dream was is being realized every single day. So we are, in fact, a unique private school. We are accredited in California. We utilize a recognized and standards-aligned curriculum. We have 2 providers. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. The Imagery Language Foundation, that sensory cognitive processing that I've spent the first part of our presentation talking about, is the core of every student's learning. And not only do they get that emphasis in the beginning of their instruction, but then also that sensory cognitive processing is applied continually throughout the rest of the course of their school year. A lot of times in other school environments, they might get some special pull-out instruction, but it's not easily integrated into the day-to-day of the general education classroom. Whereas our students all start with this foundation, and then our instructors who deliver that instruction are also the instructors who are coaching and delivering curriculum. And so they, the experts in that imagery language connection, are infusing that into all of the curriculum and content that our students are being exposed to. Our environment can be very flexible. We have classes online, in person, or a combination of both. And it's very critical right now for me to say, because we're still kind of coming out of a pandemic, that it does vary by location right now. Our goal is certainly to get back wherever and whenever we can to in-person learning. We're fans of that too. However, A lot of institutions have only 1 year under their belt with online learning. We've got at least 6 or 7 of those years under our belt already. We already had trailblazed years ago the ability to deliver the same type of online instruction, the same dynamic intervention 6, 7 years ago as we have now this year. And so for us, a switch to being an online school was nothing new. We did not have to pivot anything except the physical placement of our people because we already were experts in online delivery. So we have an individualized learning model that is one-to-one and can also have elements of small group instruction as well. And by small group, it's usually 2 to 3 students in a group. We do have some offerings I'll get to in a little bit that have a slightly larger online classroom available. But when we say small group, it's usually 2 to 3 students in a group. Our online instruction, as I've already mentioned, replicates our Lindamood-Bell quality on all levels. Our students never work alone. This is not passive learning online. This is very much engaged and in-depth learning at all times. That's live at all times. Our one-to-one instruction is provided by a team of personal instructors that are specifically trained in the methodology that we are now utilizing and developing with our students. And a personalized education plan is developed for each and every student who comes through to the Lindamood-Bell Academy. So our approach is not just being another school that focuses only on content and curriculum, content that could very well vanish from mind's eye, in a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, or a few years. Every session will activate the primary goal of Lindamood-Bell Academy to develop the imagery language foundation. And that right there, that sensory cognitive foundation of imagery enables lifelong learning. Once a student can visualize that, it takes us beyond that grade level. It takes us beyond content taught in a very specific point in one's life. So our primary goal, again, it's developing the cognitive foundation necessary for language and literacy skills, imagery. The secondary goal of Academy of our school is to continue to develop and apply that sensory cognitive processing, that imagery language connection to content and curriculum. And what that means is success is going to be a more independent learner. Success may not be a straight A learner. That depends. That depends on the student. But success is going to be developing some of those skills where they are, a little bit more of an independent learner. So very quickly, who are some of our Lindamood-Bell Academy students? Basically, anybody can be an Academy student. We have students who have struggled with special education for years. We have students who are gifted and talented. So there's a broad spectrum there. We have students who have been identified as having a learning disability or learning challenges. And we've got students who come to us that don't have anything identified. We just know that they're struggling. They might thrive and need a non-traditional learning environment. And they might be students who work better in a one-to-one environment or even a smaller group than maybe what the local neighborhood school can provide for them. So our learning model is very student-centric. And I love this slide in this picture because it shows how everything we do literally revolves around the student. That's our goal, is to provide an individualized education, very differentiated for each individual student. And that includes a team of instructional experts. That includes the Lindamood-Bell Academy directors and managers of our curriculum. And that also includes partnering with 2 very dynamic curriculum providers so that we can offer a full range of curriculum courses and content that can be differentiated to meet the needs of any of our students. So again, every single day, the student is going to be in contact with directors and managers of curriculum, curriculum advisors who are the credentialed teachers that oversee and coach all of the learning that's happening for every single student that comes to Lindamood-Bell Academy. And then our instructional experts in the Imagery Language Foundation. And again, it's those same experts, those same instructors that are also implementing curriculum with our students. So we get that really holistic approach of that imagery language development and then also the infusion of that into content and curriculum. We partner with 2 recognized and proven curriculums, the Pearson Connexus Learning and N2Y's Unique Learning Systems. We offer standards-aligned courses. We provide accommodations and modifications as needed to help our students succeed. I think it's important to mention here that we do not implement IEPs or 504s. As a private school, we don't do that. However, it is important for us to review the content and information in an IEP or a 504, because that will give us, in many instances, very critical information that will be helpful in us implementing work. And oftentimes, it can be something that helps us also carry over perhaps some appropriate accommodations for a student in our learning environment. So it's not anything that we implement, like I said, the IEP, but it's very key critical information that we want to be able to have a look at. And we want to be able to include that information in our thinking as we develop that personalized education plan for your student. We also have very dynamic content, and whether the student is online or in person or a combination of both, that includes the digital resources that we provide with our curriculum, physical books and materials, videos to reinforce, as well as project-based learning opportunities and hands-on experiences for all of our students. So this student, Tristan, says, I owe my success to my teachers. My teachers are not only my teachers, but are also some of my best friends. I love the relationships that we get to develop with our students. I've mentioned I've been here for 24 years, and I have students who are now grown adults who still reach out and say, Emily, it's amazing the impact Lindamood-Bell had on my life. Thank you so much for being a part of my story. And I get Christmas cards from families, and I can't even tell you how much that touches my heart and lets me know that what I've been doing and what we do as an organization, as a school, is hugely important and is pivotal for a lot of the families that we get the pleasure and the privilege of serving. He says, all of the hard work we've put in is showing in my effort and will help me succeed in life. And that right there is just, for me, a quintessential comment. This student now feels as though he can succeed in life. So what I'd like to do now is take just a few moments and share with you. I've been telling you a lot about Lindamood-Bell Academy, but I'd like for you just to sit back for a moment and watch a short video of some of the day in the life activities of a Lindamood-Bell student and a Lindamood-Bell Academy student. So enjoy.
Mornings used to be terrible. I never used to want to go to school. I hated it. Now I have my Lindamood-Bell Academy. Here's my team. I have my instructors. Usually it's just the two of us, but sometimes we work together in a group. My academy lets me do some of my instruction online, and I meet live with my instructors for all my classes every day. This year, we're having a science fair and a community food drive. I have a peer cheer today for my friend Billy. Billy, good job on your English paper.
As her mom, I knew that she struggled in reading and needed to go through Lindamood-Bell's intensive instruction. She made incredible gains and was so happy. That's why we decided to enroll in the Lindamood-Bell Academy.
My academy has an arts, STEM, and movement classes for me and my friends. My academy classes are hard, but they teach me in a way that works for me. I love my academy, and it can be your academy too.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that quick little snippet of a view of a day in the life of a Lindamood-Bell Academy student. Let's talk through a couple of those pieces, shall we? So one of the things that's really important to us is a consistent daily schedule for our Academy students. And I don't just mean the time of day that a student comes to school, but rather also the instructors that a student works with. We try our absolute best to have a consistent team of instructors for every single student that comes through our doors. our instructors are hand-picked and hand-selected to not only work at Lindamood-Bell, but also work with our academy students. And so they are highly engaging individuals. They are very well trained, not only in the content that they deliver and in the methodology that they deliver, but also in some positive and engaging techniques. And some of those I'm going to share with you in just a moment. I've already mentioned our instruction is delivered in various formats, online, in person, one-to-one, small groups, and even in small virtual classrooms. And then we offer breaks for snack and lunch, and then also brain breaks as needed, because let's face it, even as adults in our daily work life, we need ourselves some brain breaks. And so do our students every single day as well. Some more of the component activities that we have are art, movement, and STEM enrichment activities. Those are typically when we are open in person and can be done over the lunch period. Group activities, monthly different enrichment focus, for example, Black History Month or Women's History Month, things like that. So we get a really well-rounded perspective for our students. We often also end up doing things like community outreach. We have a lot of school rallies and science fairs throughout the course of the year. And of course, we do have, as every good school needs, a yearbook, which is what is so much fun to give to our students at the end of the year as well. So I mentioned things about brain breaks, and this is something we've created for the digital world that we were thrust into for our school this last year. But this is something that we can also still incorporate into our content and curriculum, whether it's in real life or in the virtual world. But we created these each are individual links that take us to another screen, for example, like this, where we actually have downloaded different games, and we can do a quick game of Connect 4 or Quirkle or an online puzzle to give students a break. And it's something that not only can they do in one break time, it can also be spread out over a couple of different break times over the course of the school day. Because it's really important, even in the middle of some content and curriculum, sometimes we just all get a little wiggly, and we need to be able to have a way to get our brains back to center. And so sometimes a quick game of chess or Connect 4 might be able to do that for our students. In person and online, we often use different kinds of motivators, including a bucket with the ability to put in magic stones. So as a student answers questions or as a student does their work, these little stones get dropped into the bucket. And once that bucket is full and all of these stones are gone, the student might earn a prize or earn an extra break time or something like that. We also might use a game board so that each one of these stars along the map here is a word that they've read, or is a page of content that they've processed, or is a question that they've answered on a quiz, so that by the time they finish all of those stars, they've now reached a goal and they either get, like, again, a break or some bonus points or something like that. It's important that we keep our motivation going with our students. And it's also important that we do some student team building. And so one of the things that we offer in Academy is what we call a peer cheer. And so that might be where one student acknowledges another student and says, hey, I really liked the answer that you gave during our social studies lesson. Or thank you so much for taking notes when I was out sick that day and then sharing them with me. Or, you're my friend. Thank you for being in my class and being supportive with me. And so these are all pieces that our instructors will lead with students, but it's a chance for students to sort of do some peer-to-peer positive interactions. And it creates that social emotional environment of empathy and of support that we really want our students to experience. In addition to things like peer cheer and social emotional learning, we have a code of conduct. It's spelled out very specifically in our handbook. However, we also have sort of the forward-facing LBA way. And it's kind of our pact, if you will. It's the students as well as the team being even all the way up to me, the director of the school, our instructors, our consultants, our center directors. And so we want our students to try and work as independently as possible. And part of our goal is to develop that independence over the course of the school year. We want our students to be responsible for doing their classwork and their homework. We want to treat materials and our computers with care. And we also do our very best to believe in ourselves and in each other. And again, those peer cheers that I showed you is a way to show that they believe in each other. We also give students things called magical learning moments. I didn't show you a picture of this, but it's a way that the team can acknowledge the hard work of our students. And they are so powerful because it might even be for something seemingly so small that in a typical classroom environment, the teacher's not going to be able to acknowledge a student for that. But in our small environment, in our one-to-one world, quite often we're able to say, you know what, kid, you just read 10 words. That's huge. We're so proud of you. Or you just made a movie in your head for the first paragraph that you've read with Lindamood-Bell. How amazing is that? You just got an A on your quiz. It's the first A you've gotten in your academy quiz journey, something like that. And as the team, very, very key and critically important components, for valuing each other, for listening to each other, for caring, to grow together and learn together. We want to make sure that we are respectful of each other at all times. Staff to staff, staff to student, student to staff. And then, of course, our parents in there as well. We have multiple enrollment options for the academy. And I'm going to just give you a very brief explanation of what some of these are. But if you have further questions, I definitely want you to reach out to us. At the end of this, we'll open it up for some questions and answers. And we can make sure that if you have more specific questions, that we are connecting you very directly to the learning center and the school environment closest to you so that we can continue a more personalized journey with you. Some of the students in Academy start out with what we call preparatory instruction. This is for students who maybe need an extra jump start of that sensory cognitive intervention prior to starting an academy program. So this is going to be a package or an offering that precedes the student's academy start date. We also offer specific savings when a student does preparatory instruction, and that's based on the number of sessions that are scheduled as well as the rate of the learning center where your child would be enrolled. We have several different packages that include either all group or all one-to-one or a combination of services, in addition to specific added hours of sensory cognitive intervention in our academy package. So what that means is a student who enrolls in bronze, silver, gold, whether it's a full day or a partial day, can all get a certain amount of sensory cognitive instruction as a precursor to their school curriculum. So this is where we start really building and creating that imagery language foundation. And then that's the foundation upon which we build as we start attacking and applying it to curriculum for the remainder of the school year. So you'll notice our bronze package is a small group package, but it still includes some one-to-one sensory cognitive instruction. Our silver package is a combination. It's half one-to-one and half small group. And it still has, again, some one-to-one sensory cognitive instruction put in there a little bit more. The gold full day is an all one-to-one experience. It's all one-to-one sensory cognitive instruction for 7 to 10 weeks, depending on if you do a full day or a partial day. But then all of the curriculum intervention is done in a one-to-one environment. Now, there are opportunities as appropriate for our gold students to actually participate in groups. And if that's something that you're interested in as you pursue a relationship with us and as you pursue more information, our center directors and leaders will be able to talk you through that a little bit more, what that can look like. But there are opportunities if desired for some small group while still maintaining a one-to-one support person the whole time. We also have additional enrollment options that are virtual called small classroom and kinder group. So the small classroom can be a range of anywhere from 2 to 10 students in an online classroom. We also offer the kinder group, which could be 2 to 3 students in an online group environment in a classroom type setting. The kinder group is 3 hours a day, and the small classroom is 4 hours a day. So it's kind of their partial days. And then we also offer a la carte math and or ELA, which is an offering for families who maybe do some homeschooling or do a dual enrollment with a local school, but they just need some more specified math or English language arts focus. And so we might have a dual enrollment situation happening where we're providing one or both of those courses, and another school environment is providing the remainder of the core curriculum necessary for the students. So again, if you have questions about these offerings, that's where I definitely want you to reach out, either with the Q&A portion in just a few moments, or reach out to our contact information, go online and click the link to engage us more. And then we can give you more of those specific answers. And also, in talking with you about your student, we can also learn more about what package we might recommend as an appropriate placement for your student. We also offer something called an Academy Plus package. So for our students who might need a little bit more sensory cognitive instruction than what's incorporated in the initial enrollment package of bronze, silver, and gold, is called the Plus package. And so that's where we can add additional sensory cognitive hours throughout the course of the school year in lieu of perhaps a study hall or an elective. So again, we can answer all those kinds of questions about what sort of placement is going to be appropriate and the right fit for your student, the more that we engage and learn a little bit more about your student. So this student says, I love it here because the teachers are caring, the workload is balanced, and the environment isn't too distracting, and the curriculum actually teaches you. Let me be very clear. It's not that the curriculum is actually teaching them. It's the fact that they have the sensory cognitive foundation, that imagery, language, connection. That's the thing that allows our students to learn. It may feel like it's the curriculum actually teaching them, but it's the fact that they can now connect to the curriculum through that imagery language foundation that helps them learn and be successful. So how do we get started? Number one, we need to get in touch with you specifically and individually so that we can learn more about your student. We need to be able to do a learning ability evaluation and then have that 1 hour consultation just a couple of days after. And then if we're all in agreement, you and my team alike are in agreement that Lindamood-Bell Academy is the direction we want to go, then we just simply have you complete an enrollment form. And that's it. That's all we have to do to get started. It's a very simple process. It all starts, though, with getting in touch and reaching out. So now is the time where we can open this up. Click the Q&A button at the very bottom of your screen. We are standing by to take those questions. We'll go ahead and respond to you individually via text. And if you'd like us to connect you with someone that's in your specific learning area, please make sure to provide us with the city that you're located in so we can provide the best match for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Emily Jane. I'm the director of the Lindamood-Bell Academy, and it has been a distinct privilege to visit with you today and to provide you information about our school. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.